Now we're going to be listening and learning about what's going on in our economic world. From the creators of the Theme Index and the Museum Index, please join me in welcoming the AECOM team, Industry by the Numbers. We have Brian Sands, Marguerite Papamichael, Sarah Linford, and remotely, Chris Yoshi. Please join me in welcoming them.
Reporting live from Disneyland in California, this is Brian Sands,
Marguerite Papamichael,
and Sarah Linford.
And this is World Attraction News.
Woo. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have a very exciting segment today on World Attraction News, and I'm very delighted to report this is the 11th year of the Theme Index.
Woo!
So Brian, let's kick off. Can you talk about what's happened with the numbers over the last decade and put that into context?
I would be glad to do that, Sarah, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Last year's global economy grew about 3%. It's kind of plus or minus there. By comparison, like-for-like attendance at the top 25 theme parks grew, technical issue, user error, actually declined, by about 0.5%. That is a little bit surprising, of course, but let's put that a little bit in context. So in 2005, we had attendance globally at the top 25 theme parks of about 183 million. Last year, and again this year approximately, we had total attendance at like-for-like parks of about 232 million. So over about a 10-year period, we added 50 million additional visitors to theme parks globally, which is pretty amazing. I think earlier today, Jeremy Railton said it very well. He said we're in fact in a golden age in our industry, and I would completely agree with that comment. Of course, we'll provide all the detail on the 2016 attendance in the coming weeks as the new theme index is released. We're putting the numbers together now. We gave you a little summary there, and we'll talk about a few more figures in a moment as well.
Yes, that's a very big day for us, Brian, and for the industry. Returning to global attendance, though, has the distribution changed in the last 10 years?
Yes. If we look back in 2005, we can see that North America dominated, followed by Asia and then Europe. Coming forward to 2016, the order hasn't changed, but you can see that actually Asia's share has gone up significantly, of course to the detriment of North America and Europe.
Brian, every year our audience always asks us about the performance of major operators. Can you comment?
Certainly. Again, in 2005, the top operators, Disney and Universal, together accounted for about 2/3 of attendance at those top 25 theme parks globally. Let's move forward to 2016. Now they actually account for a remarkable 3/4 of attendance at those parks. In this case, driven primarily actually by Universal.
Thanks. Thank you. That's very interesting perspective. Let's move on now, though, to what we've learned around the world as part of our Theme Index research effort. I'd like to turn my attention to Marguerite Papamichael, Director of AECOM's Leisure and Culture Practice in Europe. Thank you for being here, coming all this way, and welcome.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. So what's happened, really? Well, quite frankly, we think it's okay. It was a bit of a stable year, not very interesting in that sense. However, I did get you some winners and losers.
Great.
So let's dive in. Theme parks, winners and losers for 2016. Well, Parquet Warner is up there as a winner, and it went up with an increase of more than 9%, and I hope you're not taking notes. That's on the back of some amazing increase in tourism to Spain as a whole, and Madrid specifically, and remember that because we'll come back to that. Another winner, Puy du Fou, it gets almost boring now, year after year. They're up there on the winner list. Well done to them, again, with a very convincing 8% increase. Futuroscope, also in France, is really solidifying its position as an important French park at the moment, with an increase of 5% on the back of some really good marketing exercises. And then my favorite, I must admit, Phantasialand. I don't know whom of you were at the TEA event there. It was brilliant. Have you seen it yet? This is Klugheim. Yes, I know the IP story. I'm breaking every possible IP legislative rule here now. There you go. It's only one picture. Bloody impressive, though. So that's Klugheim. It's a new land in Fantasia land. It's wildly successful, and it's helped them grow their attendance this year. If you haven't seen it yet, go and see it. So if there's winners, there's bound to be losers. Well, in this case, it's very painful. Disneyland Paris this year, attendance fell in double digits. They're putting that down to the terrorist attacks that took place in Paris in January 2015, and then again in November 2015, and God only knows what's going to happen with what's going on there today. So that's a bit shocking, to be honest. But having said that, the tourism fell in Paris by about 1.5 million. And that's about 1.5% compared to the previous year. So of that 1.5 million, if 85% of those 1.5 million people had gone to Paris, Disneyland Paris, which is in a suburb of Paris, then yes, it would have been okay. So to put all of that down to terrorism, maybe an easy way out, dare I say that? There may have been some other underlying issues, and we've been talking about that for a while, about investment and how that helps or how often it's needed in a park. And it may be that it'll take some time for Disneyland Paris to get back up onto that growth curve after the last couple of years.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, boring otherwise.
And what can you tell us about water parks in Europe and the Middle East?
There we go. Water parks, also relatively stable overall if you look at our top. However, there are some clear winners and losers. Thankfully, no large water parks around Paris yet. Siam Park. Remember what I said about Parque Warner and tourism increase in Spain? It's driven fantastic growth this year in Siam Park, which is Tenerife in Spain. And that's on the back of increase in tourism, both domestically and internationally, to that area. And they've done really well, strengthening the Spanish economy with the growth in international tourism, and up they went. It was their turn. It's a good thing. Tropical islands in Germany also, again, fantastic year. It's quite interesting to point this one out to you. I don't know whom of you are familiar with tropical islands just outside of Berlin, but it is a traditional indoor water park, and therefore it would always do really well in all that the time that German weather is so crappy. Who was talking about that? It's true. But what they've done is they've opened up last year an outdoor area, and that's grown their summer season. So they're now an all-weather resort, and that's what's behind that increase.
Well done.
Yeah, no, it was a smart move. Not much on the loser side, to be honest. It's just marginal here or there, possibly a lack of the big investments, and we'll talk about that later, won't we, Brian? So that's good. I did want to talk about something else. So if you don't mind, so I have
Sure. Is the European park structure changing?
Siam Park, by the way. I apologize. Well, yes, and we've sat here now multiple years in a row, and we kind of talk about the things that are happening and that are big in our areas, and we've said year after year that we see more and more multi-gated resorts coming up. So I thought that this year I would put that into context for you. Now, because I'm not allowed to give you 2016 numbers, sorry, you're going to have to wait for the index to come out. Here are the 2015 numbers. What it does show is everything else that is happening in the years that are coming up. And yes, that leads me to the bottom line there, right? And I was caught up on this last year. Someone said, hey, come on, what's happening in the Middle East? And I didn't talk about it, so here you go. Dubai Parks and Resorts did open in 2016 with little bits. And although we can't report on that in the 2016 numbers because they're not full year numbers yet, we do get a sense of what's happening. Expectations were really, really high for both the large resorts that opened there, for IMG and Dubai Parks and Resorts. And in their pre-opening marketing and all their communication, those expectations were set incredibly high. What we know of reality so far is that it's not quite matching up. And that's me being rather polite for a change.
Marguerite, as you know, 5 years ago, we started the Museum Index, tracking the performance of museums around the globe. Are there winners and losers in the museum industry in Europe as well?
I got you some. EMEA museums, there is a clear winner way at the top, the Tretyakov Gallery. And if you don't know what that is, I didn't either until I got the numbers from our Moscow office. The gallery grew its attendance by half. Now that is an impressive feat. It's a gallery in Moscow, and it did that on the back of some strong domestic tourism to Moscow and 2 very successful exhibitions of painters I can't pronounce and I'm not aware of. And the other one, clear winner, is the Tate Modern in London. We talk about the Tate Modern quite a bit. It increased this year because of an opening of its new extension. I thought you might want to see that. Yeah, I had to show this to Brian as well, and he said, sorry, where is the Tate Modern? Because we're all kind of familiar with part of this picture. You may recognize that part, right? That's the big hall, and usually you see only that part of the building. Well, this huge thing is their marginal extension, darling.
See those little teeny people at the top there? And little teeny people down here? I mean, if those of you who've been to this building, it's already huge. That's amazing.
It is a massive extension. And in fact, the extension is larger and has more exhibition space than the original hall does. This increased their attendance by nearly a quarter. Not badly done. New exhibits and a couple of very successful exhibitions in the main hall as well. The other winner is Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland, and again, that is still a lot of school groups after the year prior, in which there was an anniversary of the end of World War II. So they're still riding that, and they're getting very well acclaimed throughout Europe now. So there's more and more coming, and they're very proud of the fact that they barely mark it, which I think is amazing. I wish we'd all have that. So when there's some very clear winners, in this case, there are also some very clear losers.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Heading the list is Louvre, and we just spoke about Disneyland Paris and the terrorist attacks. And the Louvre had a decline of around 15%, which kind of matches that earlier picture. Still in top position, but quite significantly down. So is that the terror attacks? Again, I don't know. 1.5 million less people who went to Paris than the year before. If 85% of that would have gone to the Louvre, then they would have had the same number. Maybe, I think most people who do go to Paris probably do pop into the Louvre, but it does seem like a very large percentage to make that up. Having said that, the Musée d'Orsay in the same city also experienced a double-digit drop. But then there were 2 other French top 10 musea who didn't, and who did really well on their marketing to schools and their connections into that educational program. There are 5 musea in London in our top that had lower attendance in 2016 and 2015. Now, not shockingly lower, but still a bit lower. And because there's 5 of them, that kind of niggles at the back of my mind. And we might be getting back on what does that actually mean to musea, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. Can I ask you to look into a crystal ball now? What predictions do you have for the future in Europe and the Middle East?
We live in tumultuous times. I truly believe that. So there. We live in tumultuous times, and that crystal ball, I wish I could. A lot of bets are off, to be honest. I don't know what's going to drive attendance in that sense, or economies rather, and these may well have an impact on those economies, and goodness knows what's going to happen with it. Having said that, there are some things that I think are interesting. The attractions in the Middle East may well gain from the wider markets that they have access to, such as India and Africa. And then again, there are some things that will never change. We all are a part of an amazing industry with amazingly creative minds. And that's going to make some amazing new developments happen. And I'm convinced that that will happen in the years to come. And that's going to change our sector, and that's going to boost attendance. So what's not going to change? I swear we will still have crazy Arabs. I don't think that's going to change. I think we will still be building additional hotel accommodation or otherwise accommodation into our resorts. That still seems to be driving, if not attendance, at least profitability. I think we'll be adding those additional gates, and I think we'll still be doing that in the year to come. I think all that VR is going to be with us for a while still. Be it VR, be it AR, be it AI, whatever it is, it will be having an impact on what we do in our location-based entertainment. And then as far as I'm concerned, I'm a big fan. I think we'll see a massive increase and a sector growing tremendously within our entertainment sector of family entertainment centers. Now, what you want to call them, that's open to debate, so's the definition. It can be mall entertainment, it can be family entertainment, but it'll change away from what used to be a nickel and a dime little ride for your little kiddie. And I think we'll see lots of that in the times to come.
Thank you, Marguerite, for your insightful analysis. We look forward to seeing what your team comes up with for the themed index. Brian, I'm just getting word that Chris Yoshi, Director of AECOM Economics in Asia, is ready to talk to us live from our Hong Kong bureau.
Chris, can you hear me? Chris, are you there? Chris, can you come in? Great. Chris, can you tell us maybe a little bit about the latest top trends in Asia? What are you seeing there?
The big story continues to be new theme parks and attractions in China. New projects, real and imagined, are occurring at a speed and scale never really seen before in the world. These projects cover a wide spectrum from full-scale destination theme parks such as Shanghai Disney Resort to regional amusement parks, scenic areas, live performance theaters, circuses, animal safaris, marine parks, historic towns, and even farm tourism. There's a policy called Beautiful Countryside where even small towns are encouraged to find what is unique about their culture and place and create attractions that draw in tourism. This boom is driven by several trends, including the rapidly rising middle class of higher levels of disposable income. However, a big trend is really a shift in consumption away from buying material goods to spending on experiences. People want to go and see new things and have fun experiences with their friends and family. Also, there is a strong government support for cultural and tourism projects, which is driving property companies to enrich their real estate projects with cultural or entertainment components. The first trend is really the most established Chinese park chains, including OCT, Chamlong, Songchen, and Fantawild and Haichang, are expanding and investing in new locations and cities and prominent resorts across the country. In addition to their own investments, their new trend is these chains are entering into management agreements with scenic areas, cultural shows, and tourism spots to boost their operations. The second trend is really in the Chinese real estate developers have entered the theme entertainment industry very fast. Probably the most famous is Wanda Group, with the largest private property developer, has already opened medium-scale parks in Nanchang and Hefei, and they have at least 15 other projects under development. Each project has more than one theme attraction. Publicly traded Shimao Property Group has 10 active projects, Evergrande has 5 projects, Country Garden has announced a partnership with Haichang for future projects. Luning Group is currently developing their Wenchang Shanghai Tian Resort area in Hainan, which is slated to include at least 2 parks in conjunction with BBC Worldwide. The third trend is the value of intellectual property is now more recognized and favored, with many themed attractions beginning to feature domestic media properties and characters. One of the more popular and valued domestic brands is Boonie Bears, an animated cartoon and movie series featuring a family of bears, which has now become the main mascot for Fantawild's family of parks. OCT has also signed a deal with the popular Cookie Sheriff animation series to leverage its characters as key personalities in numerous Happy Valley parks across China. The fourth trend is the international IPs are slowly but steadily entering China, with Universal Studios Beijing, Six Flags, and Nickelodeon all having groundbreaking events in the last 12 months.
That's great, Chris. Thank you. So since Shanghai Disney is opened, how's it doing and what kind of impact is it having on the market there?
Shanghai Disney Resort officially opened in June last year to great success. There has been a huge sigh of relief in that all the hard effort and huge investment has been well accepted by the market. Attendance remains strong, even though through the first winter, and they are on track to meet or exceed their 10 million attendance target for the first 12 months. While there are some complaints generally about long lines, the overwhelming guest response is very positive. The hotels are doing 90+% occupancy, which supports the concept of a destination theme park resort. How is this impacting the industry? Well, most Chinese investors, developers, and cities are very new to the theme park industry, and for many, this is the first time they really get to see firsthand what a world-class theme park really is. For some investors, it's a great example of the strength and acceptance of the market. For others, they are coming to realize how incredibly challenging theme entertainment projects are to implement, and they're actually looking for other forms of tourism and cultural product.
Very good. And can you tell us a little bit about the results of the theme index for Asia?
Overall, we do see continued increase in attendance numbers in Asia, with China once again leading the way. It's getting harder and harder to make the list of the top 20 parks. We are seeing the chain operators also showing very strong numbers, generally as a result of new park openings. One area of concern is we are seeing a continual softness in Hong Kong as a result of declining visitation from mainland Chinese. As parks in China become more competitive, Ocean Park and Hong Kong Disneyland will need to up their game to stay competitive. Fortunately, both parks are expanding and investment plans are well underway for new entertainment and programs and offerings.
That's great. So with all this enthusiasm, might there be a bubble developing in Asia?
There are certainly many projects that are built for the wrong reasons in the wrong location with relatively little thought to the guest experience. We are seeing an absolute boom in water park and water play projects opening up. One Chinese website tracked over 50 water parks, large spas, or aquatic centers opening in 2016. Some markets have multiple projects in the same city. However, well-developed projects with good locations that really offer great experiences will be successful. They don't need to be in city center locations. Suburban locations with good metro connectivity are fine. Resort locations with high traffic tourism are also fine. Asian consumers are very well connected. They extensively use online and mobile media, constantly searching for new experiences, and thoroughly check reviews. So if a project is bad, the word gets out immediately and attendance is poor. If the experience is great, people will seek you out. Finally, we need to remember that China has 4 times the population of the US and 2.5 times the population of the European Union. There are over 200 cities with 1 million or more population. So by all rights, China theme industry market will eventually be several times larger than any Western market. So China has a lot of catching up to do. So is the market overbuilt? Not really, but that doesn't guarantee success. Bad projects will fail.
Very good. And we've spoken an awful lot about China. What about the rest of Asia, Chris? Can you give us an update on that?
In Japan, Comcast has made a bold statement by their 100% purchase of Universal Studios Japan in Osaka, reaffirming its commitment to the market and announcing a new Nintendo-themed land in the planning. The first full-scale LEGO theme park is expected to open April 1st in the city of Nagoya. South Korea has experienced a bit of turbulence with political uncertainty and the recent drop in mainland Chinese visitors. Legoland Korea in Chungcheong will be underway for a 2018 launch. Thailand sees a slight shift in product focus, with water parks being the most popular and rewarding development. Indonesia has several parks in planning around Jakarta. In Malaysia, Fox World Malaysia, just outside of KL, is well under construction, and the final opening date has yet to be announced. In Vietnam, local real estate developer Sun Group saw the opening of its first major theme park in the country, Asia Park Da Nang. The park continues to increase visitor numbers and introduced a new major roller coaster earlier this year. Further north in Halong Bay, Sun Group has teamed up with European operator Parque Reunidos to manage the Halong Dragon Park, which opened in late 2016. An adjoining water park is expected to open later this year. The long-term market is India. With 1.3 billion population, India is just a matter of time before we see a boom in theme entertainment industry there. In summary, Asia is booming, and we can expect this to continue for the next 10 years. However, quality and experience are becoming more critical to success, and this is good news for TEA members.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. It's wonderful you could join us from Asia. Now, let's focus on the Americas. Brian, I understand you're going to talk today about some key trends, which are also by extension affecting the industry in other regions.
That's right. Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, let's start with the good news, which is that attendance at the top 20 theme parks in North America grew modestly last year at about 1.2%. On the flip side, attendance at the top 20 water parks actually declined modestly as well. Honestly, the two almost balance each other out. And you have to remember, we're in a mature market, and there are going to be ups and downs, little ups and downs in a mature market like ours. It's simple, normal variations in the market. Fortunately, as most of you here in the room know, there's a tremendous amount of activity in the market, in the North American market at the moment. We're about to see some really big park additions open up, and we have quite a lot actually in the pipeline as well. So with that in mind, I'd actually like to talk about some key broader trends. And the first one is tourism. Actually, Marguerite mentioned it a moment ago, and the effect that's occurring within Europe. And really, I see this as a very important trend for us, and one that we tend to forget about a little bit and to take for granted in our industry, and how much we're dependent actually on tourism fundamentally. Just to put things a little bit in perspective here, tourism grew last year by 3.3% globally. It also contributed to 10% of the global economy and employs 1 in 10 people in the global economy, which is a remarkable number of people. Needless to say, it's huge and it's growing, which is great for us. In fact, international tourism reached about 1.15 billion international arrivals in 2015, which was up about 58% versus a decade ago. And the U.S. has also been a major beneficiary of that. Our international arrivals have actually been up almost 65% over that same time period, which is remarkable. Here in the U.S., tourism has also grown. Overnight tourism at major urban markets has grown very strongly over that time period. In particular, both New York and Orlando over the last decade have increased to over 55 million overnight tourists a year, which is tremendous growth versus where they were 10 years ago. Much of that is driven actually by international tourism, which is shown here. During this period of time, New York actually doubled. In a period of 10 years, it doubled its overnight tourists to 12 million in 2015. This really underscores the importance of tourism to our industry, and as we see from the effects of what's happening in Europe as well, the sensitivity, and also the sensitivity by extension into our industry, which I think is really something important for us to keep in mind.
Hang on. It sounds a bit... Trump slump comes to mind?
Yeah, well, let's be honest here. I know there was an awful lot of concern about the change in the election, or the unexpected result of the election for many, and also the potential impact. There are definitely pretty strong effects that, at least in terms of the narrative on the potential impact on tourism in the United States and actually globally as well. However, I actually did a little bit of digging into this. The WTTC, the World Trade and Tourism Council, actually does updated numbers. They lag by about 2 months behind, so the latest numbers we have are for February. They forecast 2017 tourism to decline in the U.S. overall economically, but I'm actually a little bit surprised and glad to report that there was actually a 7% increase in February, year over year, in international arrivals to the United States. So, I guess maybe we're experiencing a Trump pump here instead of a Trump slump, which is a little bit of a surprise, and let's see how that plays out throughout the year, but that's a very positive thing, obviously, for our industry.
Wow, that's unexpected, but good news. I also know you frequently work in Latin America, Brian. What's happening in that part of the world?
That's right. Yeah, let's go south of the border for the moment. Here, the top 10 theme parks increased slightly in attendance by about 0.5%, while at water parks, things were actually much better. Attendance increased by about 3.5%, which is kind of a trend that we've seen over the last few years happening in water parks in Latin America. We're seeing major additions at water parks in Latin America, both in terms of the parks themselves and also, as Marguerite mentioned, the destination resort, particularly the hotel stock around them, and that's really pushing attendance forward there. While while we're here and talking a little bit about Latin America, I'd also like to just mention the fact that IAPA recently came out with a study of the attractions industry in Latin America and its economic impact. I mentioned a few years ago that there was a study done here in the United States which underscored the importance and size of the industry. And it's also very large in Latin America. As you can see here, there are about 550 attractions that are theme parks, water parks, or FECs in Latin America that we identified across 11 countries. About 3/4 of those are FECs. Speaking to Marguerite's trend, we see a lot of FECs in Latin America, but also quite a few theme parks and water parks. And at those, there were an estimated 90 million attendees in the last year for which data was available. They created about 100,000 direct jobs and nearly $2 billion in direct revenues. So it's a significant portion of the economy in Latin America. And I know that IAPA, TEA, and a lot of you are doing direct work in Latin America. But for those of you who aren't necessarily active in that region, you should take a look because there is actually quite a lot happening there and there's a lot of room for expansion as well.
Brian, something that we've talked about for years now has been investment and IP. You looked into that for us, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, we've obviously heard quite a bit of discussion about that topic here today, and oftentimes those discussions happen behind closed doors, or maybe a little bit of a mention in the media. The focus on that topic is for a good reason. Obviously, the cost is very high to develop new attractions at many different scales, and in addition, the frequency that's required, as we all know, reinvest, reinvest, reinvest is the mantra of our industry. And it becomes both the investment and IP angles are very important for our industry. So we thought we should try and take a little look at it because everybody says, hey, this is really important for our industry, but how important is it for our industry? So we took a look at the theme index and we actually identified changes that had occurred in the last decade or so in parks. And where we could measure the change that occurred and we could control for other factors, we selected about 50 parks that we looked at, and we looked at major land additions and major ride additions to see what happened in terms of attendance. And we looked at some other factors as well, but I'll just talk briefly about the impact on attendance here. So what you see up on the screen there is on the left is the impact on attendance over a 3-year period from a base year that preceded the investment, the first year that the new investment was open, and then the second and then the third year. And you see the percentage increase that occurs versus the base year in attendance. This is a median value. I want to note the range is very high as a function of, or very wide as a function of the particulars of the park. But we have a median value of a 35% increase in attendance. So for a major land investment. So clearly, a land and that kind of investment can have a huge impact on attendance. For a new ride, the impact was less at about 13%, but still very respectable increase over a 3-year period.
Okay, well, that's impressive. What about IP, or intellectual property, and why does it help attractions?
Yeah, well, we had a lot of good discussion about that today, and I know there's a huge amount of discussion that goes on about it. And what I can say is that IP acts in many ways the same way that a brand works for a consumer item, for example. It helps to remove uncertainty for many of the visitors. It acts as a promise in terms of what that they're going to get. It provides clear information and about the nature of what they're going to be getting. For attraction guests, the familiarity of an operator's brand and the associated IPs encourage them to go to those attractions. This is particularly true of attraction brands and IPs that have a clear universe or storyline and that have well-defined characters. The uniqueness of those IPs as well as the overall quality are also very important. And I want to say, I understand that this is a controversial issue, and I'm sitting in a room of a bunch of attraction designers. Mr. Conti earlier today asked about this question. This is not to stifle creativity or to say that attraction developers and operators should only go with IPs, but there is a reason why this occurs, and it's a kind of a risk-reward question, and we're talking about future discussions that we're going to have where we're going to dive down on this topic further to help kind of clarify that, but we wanted to be able to define here a little bit what the potential value is of an IP in the attractions industry or relative to various IPs to each other.
Yeah, so it's all about the numbers, Brian. It's all about the numbers. Can you estimate that potential?
Yeah, well, you know, that's true, Marguerite, and it's actually very difficult to do that, as you know. We've attempted to do so, and to do so in a reliable, consistent manner is a very big challenge. What we have managed to do is actually come up with a methodology where we could look at IPs versus each other, not necessarily in that perfect world that an economist, would love to have, where you could say, in this universe, I create an IP-driven attraction. In this universe, I create the same thing, but without the IP. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. Even Greenspan couldn't do that back in the day, or
We
Janet
need more
Yellen.
VR for that, don't we?
We do. We need more VR. Good point. Very good point. We did come up with an index, though. We actually put together a couple of major quantitative measures and then a qualitative measure that allows us to actually look at these IPs against each other to come up with an index to say which IPs are relatively better potentially as an attraction than others. So just showing you here, this is the top 20 out of about 100 IPs that we've looked at. There's going to be very, very familiar names here that you would expect to see as a result. Most of these have been developed into major attractions, and some of them are coming as well. What's great about this is that we have the ability to do this for hundreds, if not thousands, of potential IPs. And we have increasingly the opportunity to work with operators who are actually looking at various IP options. Now, this isn't the same as measuring IP or not to IP, but it's a way of saying which of these IPs might we want to prefer and value higher than other IPs.
So Brian, I'm sure our audience is wondering when we are going to talk about VR. It seems to be part of every conversation in the industry.
Let's come back to that conversation. Let's do it, right? Because it is something that we could use, perhaps, like Marguerite just said. In fact, I'd like to say, on this topic, VR, AR, MR, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. We're going to kind of talk about them all mixed up together. But yeah, you can hardly open an email today. You can hardly go to a conference and not have this topic come up.
Everywhere.
Yeah, so what I'd like to say is last year we had what I would like to call VR 1.0 and VR 1.1. We saw some bolt-on attractions happening with VR. We actually mid-year saw the first, what I would characterize as the first major VR experience that was sort of bolted on at Madame Tussauds as well. Relatively straightforward experiences, all using sort of basic technology, but in the case of the Madame Tussauds Ghostbusters experience, creating at an attraction probably the first sort of semi-immersive, semi-self-controlled environment, which was great. This year, as was mentioned earlier, there are a lot of new VR attractions that are coming out to the market. If you have the opportunity, I mean, it's great. You're here close. Check out the IMAX VR Center. It's interesting, I would say. We also had the opening in Orlando. Some of you at IAAPA might have gone over to see the zero latency soft opening or beta opening. And then the Void has recently opened in Utah and in Dubai, allowing, actually, in this case, for multiplayer and multi-experience, which I think is really sort of the moving forward into VR 1.2. As was mentioned a moment ago, there are some really big challenges actually with this industry, though. The pre and post experience time creates a huge sort of time suck and a major capacity issue in trying to get people in and through it. It's also very difficult for people who aren't necessarily used to it to kind of figure it out quickly and efficiency, which also affects the visitor experience. The reliability of the gear has been an issue occasionally. The quality of the VR experience, I mean, fundamentally, it's about not just the numbers, but...
Oh, the experience.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That creative part, that's right. The other thing is the relative isolation of the experience. I mean, it is, in many cases at the moment, a relatively isolated experience. That on top of that, I would say that there's a major challenge that's being faced by a lot of attractions just generally, but in the movie theater industry as well has been dealing with this for a long time, and that's the fact that we can have experiences that are a VR attraction that suddenly you can get at home. I mean, I can play Ghostbusters at home now. I can do Star Wars at home now with PlayStation VR, to name one, which is kind of remarkable. That said, I do like a good challenge. And the VR industry, I think, is up to a good challenge as well. Why not? It's growing rapidly. It seems to have a lot of potential, and I hope it's up to the challenge. I certainly hope it's up to the challenge because there are some amazing forecasts out there for the size of this industry. One of the forecasts I saw recently expected it to grow tenfold in size over the next 5 years, which is tremendous. That's a lot of upside potential. It's also a lot of expectation, I would say, as well.
Gotta kill the zombies, though.
That's amazing. As we wrap up Americas, are there any other trends you'd like to touch on?
Yeah, I would just like to mention for a moment wildlife attractions. The wildlife attractions have had some controversies and continue to face some controversies. And our friends over at the AZA have been conducting regular surveys about the views of the public about zoos and aquariums. And I'll just call out at the blue line at the top is those who have no objection to wildlife attractions. And the red line is those that really have objections to them, that is that no one should ever have animals in captivity. And as you can see, the no objection line at the top has declined over time. And at the same time, the should never has remained roughly constant, meaning the gap between the two is getting a little bit closer together. And AZA and all of its members are really watching this trend. And there are some good precedents here for why they should be watching it. The graph that's shown here is the views on same-sex marriage. And this is a little bit older, but I'll call you attention to the convergence that was occurring. It kind of started slowly, and then there was a tremendous rapid flip that occurred. And the possibility is that that could actually occur and affect wildlife attractions as well. So clearly, despite whatever your personal views may be on animals in captivity, it is an important part of our industry, and clearly it faces a major challenge. The most notable example of this is obviously SeaWorld, and they have done a lot to respond to this issue in order to, in particular, both change their animal care, but also to get the message out about the conservation efforts that they're doing, they and others. And they have been doing it for a long time. They just haven't necessarily been trumpeting that horn. And that's really the same thing at other attractions. So the National Aquarium in Baltimore, the Vancouver Aquarium, the Lincoln Park Zoo, the National Zoo, and many, many others are actually trying to get that conservation message out. They're doing great work. They're being more aggressive about doing it. And by doing that, really, hopefully they're going to continue to create a win-win situation where they're able to conserve animals, we're able to get more people exposed to them, continue to be exposed to them, and to continue to support the good work that they're doing. And of course, on top of that, the good work that they're doing results in lots of lovely baby animals, which is wonderful, and that's what we want to see going forward. So that's my top trends in the Americas, Sarah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
So, Sarah, let's turn to you, particularly the work that you do in the cultural field and that part of our index. Any trends you've identified in that part? I understand it's a very special year.
It is a very special year for the Museum Index. As you know, we're celebrating our 5th anniversary of the Museum Index. It was 5 years ago. We decided to include museums and recognize their roles as attractions. So now that we have 5 years of data to look at, we're starting to see a few trends. Overall, attendance is stable. And while individual museums will fluctuate year by year, on the whole, we're seeing a very steady aggregate number. When we look across the geographies, Asia is the primary driver of growth, mainly due to China's national government plan to develop hundreds of new museums each year. In the US and Europe, the museum markets are mature, and we see very consistent attendance overall. We also see that market shares for the US and Europe have stayed relatively stable. The reality is that museums must reinvest every year to maintain attendance, and that attendance will fluctuate on an annual basis with exhibition calendars and new experiences. So while stable sounds great, it also means that museum attendance has not grown over the last 5 years with tourism and market growth.
That's really interesting and a little bit concerning, to be honest. What are the museums doing about this, and how are they going to remain viable and relevant?
Yes, Marguerite. Museums are facing really an unprecedented period of change. After the recession, government funding and charitable giving declined and has become ever more uncertain. Earned revenue streams have become increasingly important, and this has implications for how museums think about their visitor experience. It also means that they're thinking about contributed income more strategically, needing to prove outcomes and impacts, and in a sense, earn their contributed revenue.
Yeah.
Museums must appeal to a new generation and develop visitor experiences that are fresh for new audiences. And in that effort, I have my own version of the museum trends I'll walk you through. So let's get started. Of course, VR. It's everywhere. Last year we talked about it when we saw a handful of museums experimenting, and now that trend has exploded. Even small to mid-sized museums are incorporating VR in some ways, as technology cost has really come down. It's enriching the exhibition content, bringing the thrill of ride experiences into museum galleries, and extending the museum experience really beyond the walls. Next, there's really no end to the creativity and innovation we see in how museums push traditional facility rentals and programming. Museums are ever more community spaces where you can now get a workout, do corporate team building, or host a bachelorette party. Another trend is on the food and beverage front, where the experiencers are also evolving, responding to a growing demand for improved dining experiences. We see upscale cafeterias where tired fare has been replaced with global cuisine, elegant dining rooms, partnerships with well-known chefs, and most new, the pop-up experiences that are really tied to exhibition content. Museums are also seeking out partnerships in new ways. This can be new ties with universities for financial stability in trying times, and education programs, or licensing agreements of well-known museum brands in new locations. There continue to be licensing partnerships around the globe as well, with the Louvre of Abu Dhabi set to finally open this year, and a new agreement between London's best-known design museum, the V&A, in Shenzhen. Museums are also beginning to borrow from the entertainment industry, now offering personalized experiences that attract millennials, connect with pop culture, and leverage social media. In the end, all this reinvention is certainly exciting, but comes with challenges. Technology that replaces the museum experience with a virtual one may be a double-edged sword. Will people visit museums without actually visiting museums in the future? Can museums evolve without diluting their important missions? Will museums reach the audience of tomorrow? We're certainly watching to find out.
That's great. Thanks, Sarah. And with that, reporting live from Disneyland in California, this is Brian Sands.
Sarah Linford.
And Marguerite Papamichael.
And this is World Attraction News. Bravo. High five.